Hi guys, it's Ben here from TRX Space Station. How's everyone doing? And welcome to this talky kind of video. I felt like chatting about a few different things. The first thing I wanted to talk about, one of the major gripes that I think we've had with the modern game generation is the fact that games often come out in a slightly rushed form, and then slowly over the weeks and months after release they get various patches to correct things that may have been wrong with the original version. And I think that the availability of post-release updates and patches can often have a lot of negative implications because, yeah, as I said, games sometimes feel as though they're a little bit rushed, or they come out with bugs and things in them that wouldn't normally have been allowed because back in the day the game had to be perfect at the time of release. However, there are some examples of games where this has actually been a really good thing, and the games have actually had really committed development and have transformed over a period of time. And the game I want to talk about as an example of this is No Man's Sky. Now, I was watching a really good video by my friend the Schmuckmaster, and he was talking about how he's been getting back into this. And you guys will remember this game was super hyped back in the day. I remember before the release watching so many videos by the development studio promising all sorts of crazy things, and what we actually got at release, especially if you paid the full price for the initial version, was not quite up to our high standards and what we expected. Now, I actually bought it quite a while after it first came out, so I got it for like 15 quid, and so perhaps it didn't sting so badly for me at that point because I was like, well, it's alright. But I could see that the product that was released fell short of the promises that were kind of made. Now, you have to really, though, tip your hat to the development studio and say that, you know what, they actually stuck with this. I think they apologized pretty much for the overhype, and they stayed with it. And what we've ended up with now is so far away from the original release, it's incredible. What we've ended up with now is actually a really good game, and I think this is a fantastic example of how what you actually have at the beginning isn't necessarily what you end up with, and the feedback of the community, the people who play the game at release, actually does now have a role in influencing the game's development, which again is pretty amazing. It kind of has that sort of dynamic interaction between the studio, the guys that made it, and us, the fan base, the consumers, the players. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back into this. So I installed it on my PS4, I've jumped back in, now probably over a year since I originally got it, and it's really good. They've added some fantastic stuff in there. The first thing is that you can now play the game in third person, and that gives you much more of a feeling of an identity. You know, you can customize your character in so many different ways. You can play as all these crazy different races, alien races, robot races. You can change how they look, the color scheme, and you feel much more invested in the game because you're able to do that. But the big thing that we sort of griped about when it came out was the fact that the multiplayer wasn't properly integrated, really. And it was hyped up as being a multiplayer game but didn't really deliver. But now it's much easier to play as multiplayer, and even in the short time that I've been playing it, I've come across planets and galaxies and flora and fauna that were discovered by other people, and you feel much more integrated as a bunch of people, as a player base, and a little bit less isolated in terms of just being stuck out there. And so I want to say that post-release updates aren't always a bad thing, because these guys have really turned this game around. It does, however, kind of make you feel like you should wait. If you buy a game on day one, or you pre-order it in particular, it feels increasingly like you're kind of taking a risk now, because given the fact that games evolve so much after their release, it may be best to wait, either to get the game cheaper, or to actually see how things have gone after various updates. And I think this has been a gradual thing. You know, there have been several updates to this game over the last year or two, and now the end product is fantastic. What's interesting, though, is sort of watching what's going to happen in terms of whether people return to the game or not, because probably the initial bit is when most people's interest is going to be piqued, I don't really know how it's going to work. Are people going to buy the game now, hearing about the changes post-release? Or are people who've previously written it off going to revisit it? I mean, I know that I did. You get that chance to capture people's attention, but if you lose it, then I'm not so sure how easy it is to get people back. I don't know, but what I would say is that we've ended up with a really good game here, and I'm looking forward to actually playing it with some friends. Building bases together, because that's the really awesome thing that's in there now. It's almost like a Minecraft game. Yeah, you can basically build your own base, you get resources, and people can see your base. I think that one of the big problems that they found with it was the fact that as soon as you allow anything constructive and multiplayer and the ability to change things, people just have to come and trash it. And so I think what they found was that the bases kept getting destroyed. People would come into your game, delete all the stuff that you'd made, and basically trash it, because, you know, that's just what happens. That's what always happens in games. But yeah, I think it would be really fun to make a base with friends, you know, a little hideout, digging underground and setting all that up, and it's just incredible. It's a game to play, to relax, to sit and chill. So I would highly recommend you guys go and pick that back up if you played it before and got disillusioned with it, because it is actually really good. Now, I was reading Kotaku today, and they were talking about the new Assassin's Creed game, and Ubisoft are saying that they basically plan for people to play the new game for something like 6 to 9 months. And it's got me thinking that actually there is this move now towards a lot of post-game content and a lot of kind of online content that keeps people playing after the campaign. It used to be, back in the day, you'd play a game, single player campaign, platform game, you'd beat the last level, and then you'd stop. But slowly those lines are getting more blurred now with online updates and post-game content. I think companies are kind of wanting a game to be more than just a sort of small campaign, but to be an evolving experience that carries on. And that's something that I probably would have been skeptical about back in the day. You know, the cynical side of me is like, well, that's because they want to rinse you for more cash, and they're probably going to add things like paying to upgrade or paid multiplayer modes or things like that as a way of grabbing you and getting you more addicted. However, I have recently just got the Platinum Trophy in Rayman Legends on the PS4, and I'm part of PSN Profiles, the website where it shows you how fast it took you, or how quickly you got the trophies and how long it took you to play a game through. And this game took me 9 months. And actually that's incredible to think that what is essentially a single player campaign game, I did all the campaign, then kept me playing for 9 months because I played the daily challenges and I unlocked all the lums and I wanted to get the Platinum Trophy. And this is a really positive example of this sort of territory we're going into now, which is a gaming experience that lasts longer than just that single player campaign. And I actually really enjoyed it. It's pretty impressive that this game managed to keep me you know, attentive and interested for that long, but it did. It was really fun doing it. And you know, seriously, I think you get your money's worth these days for games that do that. You know, what would be a £20 game for, you know, 4 or 5 weeks to play through the single player campaign actually becomes an ongoing experience for several months. And I think this can be a really positive thing, especially if you don't have lots and lots of money to go keep buying new games. Actually, just to get stuck into one thing and to have that experience and to experience the post-game content and keep going for some time was really, really fun. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what other games do with this. I know Final Fantasy 15, which I beat probably a year ago now, that started adding loads of post-game content too. It was like adding extra campaigns and things and different missions for certain characters, and I didn't get that and I didn't go back to it. I kind of beat the campaign and then stopped. So I think it has to be done right, probably with some kind of multiplayer element or a competitive element or a collecting element, rather than just here's an extra load of stuff, because that can be difficult when you've got a big library of games. I think that's probably the downside to it, or the negative sort of aspect of it, is that for people who've got a lot of games, they're probably just thinking, you know what, I need to just play this and move the hell on. And maybe it's a little bit frustrating to be like, I want to just draw a line in the sand and have this game done. And now you're adding 9 months worth of online challenges that I have to get the trophy. But then again, most people who play games aren't Platinum Trophy hunters. That's something that I've just got into recently. But I must say, you know, you really can't complain to be getting that long an amount of gameplay out of a game for the price that you pay for it. I almost feel like we're getting really good value for money in a way that we wouldn't have done back in the day. So I would highly recommend Rayman Legends, by the way. I think it's has been discounted quite a bit on the PlayStation Store, and it's just a superb platform game. Swifto recommended the Rayman games to me, and you can't go wrong with it. It's basically as good a platformer as you can get, in my opinion. Now, I've been playing quite a bit of my 3DS recently with my commute, and there's one thing that I wanted to talk about, which was, if you guys remember, I've actually always been a fan of roguelike video games, starting back in the day with Add-on, which was an old ASCII-based game, which is incredibly difficult. But what I really like is, particularly on Nintendo's handhelds, but Nintendo actually has a really good reputation for continuing on roguelike franchises, and I've been playing Etrian Mystery Dungeon. Now, the Etrian Odyssey series, it's incredible actually, because those games really go back right to the early sort of 80s and 90s games of proper Dungeons and Dragons dungeon crawlers. You know, the Etrian Odyssey games, you have to draw your map with a stylus on the bottom of the screen of the DS. They're really hardcore, they're very difficult, they're very punishing, and they directly remind me of Eye of the Beholder. And I kind of think we're so lucky to have games that stay true to those old school pure RPG mechanics on a modern system, because, you know, sometimes it feels like things are watered down and more approachable maybe, but it's incredible to think that those old school games are still alive today. And I have to thank Atlus as a developer and Nintendo as a company for not losing faith in that and keeping that going. Now, the Mystery Dungeon games, they're basically full-on roguelikes. You play as a party of 4, exploring randomly generated dungeons, and the thing I've always loved about roguelike games is the consequences. If you do something stupid and you die, if you push your luck too much, if you don't prepare, you die and you go back and the dungeon resets and you lose your stuff. It's not permadeath, but it's expensive. You lose half of your money and randomly some of your items. And to me, that's really thrilling, because you have to plan, you get really invested in your characters, because it means something if you die. You really want to make sure that you win the fights, and the difficulty level is just challenging enough to keep you going and intriguing, and it's not just a complete walk in the park like some modern RPGs can feel. It's proper, it's challenging, you have to think about what you're doing, and for that reason I absolutely love it. And I've been, you know, looking through in recent decades, Nintendo have actually been really good, because you've had the Shiren the Wanderer series on the Nintendo DS, and also in Japan on the Wii. We had Baroque, which was ported to the Nintendo Wii, and we had Chocobo's Dungeon, which was a roguelike. And to me, this is just so exciting that genre, that really old genre that was, you know, actually quite hardcore and goes back to the DOS days, is still alive and kicking and is still going, and I just find it really exciting. So if you're into a kind of that hardcore challenge, I would strongly recommend checking out Etrian Mystery Dungeon. The 3DS really does have some fantastic role-playing games on it. It's not dead. I know that it may be coming towards the end of its lifespan, but there are so many strategic, challenging RPGs on there that I think it's well worth holding on to and collecting some games for it. Now, just one last thing, just some interesting pickups here. When I was a kid, I was really into the Disney films. They were films that me and a lot of other kids at school really celebrated and really enjoyed. And whenever I would go round to a friend's house as a kid, it would be one of the things that we went to and did. We'd always go there and put on a Disney film. And the weird thing is that I keep getting a craving to watch them, and on Netflix and Amazon I can barely find any of them. I don't know whether it's to do with Disney's licensing or whatever, but so many times I'd be searching through Netflix or Amazon Prime. There's really a very scanty little handful of Disney films there, and so I was like, you know what, I just want to buy some of the classics. And I went to CEX and basically had a huge Disney binge, and I've picked up an absolute mountain of Disney films here, because I don't think these films ever age, and I don't think that once you've bought them you'll ever get rid of them and you'll ever tire of them, and you'll still watch them. And when I've got kids, they will watch them too. And so it's kind of like maybe a little sub collection that I'm starting here, just to buy back some of those beautiful nostalgic films from back in the day. So yeah, in no particular order, I've got myself quite a collection here. I spent about 30 quid. Bambi, obviously, one of the classics. The thing with Disney films is they're so painfully saddening at times. Bambi was like one of those ones where you're a kid, it's like, oh, that really hurts right in the feels. They know how to make kids feel sad, and as an adult watching them, I still feel devoed. Beauty and the Beast, an absolute classic. I remember going to see this in the cinema back in the day. I think it was probably the first animated Disney film that I ever saw. And what an incredible film it is. And watching that is just going to take me back to my childhood so much. Now, I also remember having 101 Dalmatians on VHS back in the day. It was given to me as a gift for looking after somebody's dog when I was a kid, and me and my brother would watch it over and over again. I remember all the songs from it, especially Cruella de Vil. If she doesn't scare you, no evil thing will. Fantastic, absolutely superb, one that I love so much. Now, this is the film that I was looking to get hold of and I couldn't find. The Aristocats. This was one of my favourites back in the day, about the Parisian cats that can speak. It's really cute, it's a very fun story, and I just had a craving to watch it and couldn't find it anywhere. Aladdin, again, I remember getting this back in the day, and this is one of the best. It just, I don't know, you really struggle to beat Aladdin. Mulan is one that I've really enjoyed, and Neve hasn't seen it. This one's kind of expensive, 6 quid. But a modern tale with a very warm sentiment about a woman who pretends to be a man to join the army. This one, Sword in the Stone, was my favourite back in the day. I watched this over and over again, and I loved the magical elements to it. I loved the wizard and the really silly songs of to and fro, left and right, all that stuff. I kind of liked the fantasy ones as a kid. They were the kind of ones that piqued my interest the most. And then The Rescuers, because just classic. I mean, you know, you can't go wrong with The Rescuers. And one that I haven't seen before, The Black Cauldron, which I thought, you know what, why not get one that you've not seen before? This is part of the Classics series. So yeah, really weird how there's a big hole on Amazon and Netflix for these films, but let me know what your favourite Disney film was back in the day, guys, and if you recommend any that I have to pick up. Robin Hood was one of my favourites. I need to go find that. So anyway, thank you for listening to me rambling on. Take care, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.